For the love of God, we have a snowman. You're watching a YouTube video about reasons to shoot film. It's likely then that either you already shoot film or are thinking about shooting film. And it's likely this won't be your first video discussing the reasons you should shoot film. It's tangible. It's about the process. It's slow. It's analog. Yes, it certainly is all of these things. But most videos fail to illustrate the single greatest reason why you would ever shoot film in this digital age. And no, it's not to stand out. So today I'm shooting Cinestill 50D and Kodak Gold, but the Gold is in 35mm. I loaded it as sprocket shots, you'll see. But the reason I chose those film stocks is that Cinestill, when it blooms, you get that, you get the red halation. But when shooting a really bright scene, most of the time the entire film stock will kind of bloom a little pink and warm up. And oftentimes when shooting winter scenes, everything turns out really blue. And so shooting Cinestill warms everything up. And I really enjoy that kind of soft, bright pink look to such a cold, typically high contrast, sharp scene. Cinestill in the winter I think is beautiful. I'm metering at ISO 40 so I can get a little bit more bloom in the highlights, and because I'm using an average meter, I'm just making sure I get a lot of the dark parts of the tree. That way my meter's not entirely thrown off, and then I'm also going to take a direct reading of the sky just to make sure that it does, in fact, it should go up, and in fact it does. All right, we're looking at 1/50th of a second, f8. I'm going to try to frame a sprocket shot of this same scene, see if I can't find a secondary composition and frame up a sprocket shot before I move on to the next location. Do not discredit the aforementioned. The tangible nature of film is one of the many things that makes the medium as fun as it is. There's nothing quite like the magic of looking at a roll of slide film on a light table, or the instant film shots stuck to your fridge, sparking conversations as guests reach for a cold drink. The tangible nature of film can lend a lasting value of true creation in a modern digital sarcophagus. All right, this time we are starting out with the sprocket shot. Kind of looking in this little pocket where these cars are. And so I'm gonna do another sprocket shot and let the tops of these trees really frame in the top and kind of keep your eye from wandering out the top of the frame. Really feel tight and squeezed in like we're boxed in. That's the concept of the frame. So, all right, I'm gonna go ahead and meter the scene. And I'm definitely gonna meter for where the cars are is gonna be kind of in shade or in shadow. No, it's not a drastic difference, but I'll meter for where the cars are. F8, 1/250th of a second. There we go. Shot 2 of the sprocket shots. I'm gonna switch to the Cinestill and go in a little closer. Actually, I think I'm gonna go further back. Put on a longer lens, maybe the 127. Fantastic, so I've now swapped to the 127 and I'm going to line up a portrait orientation so we can see the tops of the trees. And for this one, I can see the sunlight hitting the tops of the trees. And so I'm going to expose for the shadows where the cars are and let the tips of the trees that we can see in the sunlight give me that beautiful Cinestill glow. So once again, I can meter. I know that, last shot I was at F8 at 1/60th. And I know I'm in basically the same light. So F8 at 1/60th, and then the process of shooting film is by far the largest difference between it and digital. Counting each frame as you near closer and closer to the end of a roll, every shot feeling more and more precious. The dance of manual focus and lens-mounted aperture controls. The deep slap of a shutter and ISO limitations. The delayed gratification calls on our human curiosity. There's always this tiny amount of guess. It's enthralling, is it not? So for this shot, my main focus is, once again, something tucked away in some snow-covered trees. And I have this driveway here that I can walk up and help elevate my viewing position. And I really enjoy having a slightly elevated viewing position because when you're looking down on something, it can sometimes feel small because that's, as humans, you know, if we're looking down at something, it's normally small. So for metering the scene, like I said, we do have a pretty big difference in the shadows versus the highlights. So I'm just going to take several readings and then decide on how far I want to push the shadows or how far I want to push the highlights. I'm going to stop down to F11 to try to capture more of what's going on in the background. I'm going to go for 1/250th. Of course, like I said, I'll lean a little bit on the shadow side. Now there is another shot just to the side of the house, and so we're going to move over there. You know, part of me kind of wishes I shot this shot first, since it was definitely more dependent on the placement of where that sun came across the snow. So originally, when I first saw this scene, I was thinking about looking straight down at seeing a lot of the yard. But because I'm at a waist level finder, I have to look down and I'm short. So I can't necessarily see, I can't be high enough to look down and see the soft snow on top. So I end up looking a lot flatter across the surface. And because of that, the yard ends up not being too fantastic of a subject. So instead I'm gonna let the house once again take precedence. You've got a deck and some nice light going on behind it. I'm gonna go ahead and meter this as the sun's moving across the sky. Right now it's in the frame and I like that. I wanna stay at F11. We'll be at about 1/60th. My light meter is giving me an 80th, but it's either a 60th or a 1/25th. And because right? The whole point of this is to get that Cinestill glow. I will err on the side of overexposure. The snail pace gives much room for thought and conversation, as my video series Shutter Therapy is designed to elucidate. When you spend several minutes composing and calculating every single image, it gives you time to exist with your work. Not just a fleeting moment and a flick of the wrist, shooting film keeps you in tune with the world around you. It's a walking pace, with much time to smell the roses. So, there's a tree here. These big pine trees are blocking the snowfall from ever hitting the ground, right? It collects on the trees. So there's exposed grass, and right behind the exposed grass is a massive pile of snow. And that's really what I want to see, but at the same time, I'm concerned that the texture, the juxtaposition, right, of the grass and the snow isn't enough to hold your attention. I feel like maybe that's not enough. And I always get in my head about that that's not worth looking at. Like, no one cares. Yeah, we get it, it's snow and grass, but I don't know, at the same time, it's snow and grass. It is kind of interesting, especially this amount of snow to also have grass. That's gotta be worth an image. I want it to be clear. I want it to be obvious that the thing that I want you to look at is the grass and the snow, and that the house is really just a background. It's a backdrop, a place where we exist, but it's not something worth looking at. And I think if I stop down, the texture and everything else going on with the house will draw away from the, almost like a fairylands, right, where this grass and this snow interact. So by opening up, I can allow the context of the home to enter in the image without drawing your eye to it, without pulling your eye away from the subject. So it lets me give the subject context without giving the picture more information. That's a good way to put it. Underneath the tree is about 1/100th, 1/125th. And if we're looking at the scene as a whole, we're at 1/500th. So if I shoot it at 1/125th, I should be able to pull up a lot of the details in the shadows. I should still get them, right? We're talking negative film. And 2 stops overexposed in the sky should give me a lot more warmth. I think we'll be okay at 1/125th. And first I'll do the landscape orientation. And now we're going to do a portrait orientation. Exact same settings. I'll let you decide. Do you like the landscape or the portrait orientation? So I just want to say thank you, Cheryl, for allowing me onto your property. This is the path going back to her backyard. That she said, hey, if you can see an image in the backyard, you're more than welcome to take it. But what I actually like is that there's a path to the backyard. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and drop down as low as I can to get in the path. And then I think I'm gonna frame vertically, the sprocket shot being up and down, to really draw attention to the kind of narrow chute that is the path. A fully mechanical camera is art in the age of automation. Never a battery to concern yourself with. There's nothing between you and the image. No CPU making choices, no settings to fiddle around with, no buttons to program. A well-designed metal and leather light box has all the actuators, levers, and dials right where you need them, and nowhere you don't. It's all at your fingertips. It's haptic. This is another detail-focused shot. This tree right here has some leaves that have fallen. It's clear that there's been some birds landing on this tree and picking at the leaves, and the leaves have landed and cascaded down across the snow. We have beautiful side lighting, so I'm going to focus on the relationship between the tree, the snow, and the leaves, and that'll be the focus of the two compositions. So with this scene, once again, I'm going to open up to allow the background to add context without adding information. This time I'm going to shoot wide open because we have a lot of lights in the frame and a lot of diagonals coming out of the corner. I think that shooting wide open and allowing the vignette to further draw your eye to the center of the frame, because the center of the frame is pretty empty. And so what ends up happening is the corners force you to the middle and the middle forces you outward. And so this kind of back and forth volley of where your eye ends up going forces you to just continuously consume and indulge yourself in the photo, and doesn't let you wander out or leave or focus too heavily on one thing that you miss the rest of the details of the image. Because we're metering in snow, the meter is going to be thrown off a lot by the fact that everything is white. And so if you take an average reading in the snow, it's going to tend to force you to underexpose. So if you are taking an average meter, consider what you fill your frame with and try to include both light things and dark things in order for your average metering to be accurate. So metering for the shade is giving me 1/80th. Which is perfect. It's spot on. I said I should be somewhere between 1/25th and 1/60th, and 1/80th is exactly that. I don't have 1/80th. My options are 1/25th or 1/60th, and because I do want to see the highlights, I'm going to go with 1/25th. I'll probably end up having some pretty significant blown out highlights. However, I am trying to see the texture in the leaves and some other things. I certainly don't want underexposure. I do want this scene to sing very brightly. You know what? I goofed. I waited too long. The light has moved and it's not hitting the snow and the tree the way it was before when I actually liked the image. That's disappointing. We're gonna shoot it anyways. Fantastic. Now, for a sprocket shot of this scene, I'm really interested in seeing kind of the entire thing. The neighborhood as a whole, down the street, backlit by the sun. I think just a landscape this way would be very nice for a sprocket shot. So I'm gonna go ahead and find that composition and I'll see you there. So for this shot, I'm basically gonna shoot a wide of the same thing. I'm not particularly in love with it, but it'll be interesting to see the differences between these two film stocks and how they render the same scene. I'm once again shooting at f/16, except now instead of 40 ISO, I'm metering for 200. So I've brought my shutter speed from 1/15th to 1/60th to compensate for those two stops of light. And I'm shooting basically at infinity focus. It's f/16, it doesn't really matter, but I need to move you out of the way because I can see you. Top left of the frame, beaming sunlight. We'll see how that affects the image. I'll probably get some serious blooming and some glow. I've got a lens flare going on, so it is negative film, but maybe you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and go one stop underexposed. Try to save some of that sunlight coming in. Another great reason to shoot film that I don't often hear people talk about is that the cameras are unique. Unlike every DSLR, film systems are wildly different from one another, which dramatically affects the shooting experience. Not to mention, each system has a host of lenses designed for it, some of which can impart a ton of character onto every image captured through them. And with well over 200 years of innovation, there's definitely a system for everyone. I was really hoping to get something like this today. I've got a little like snow castle, I guess. It's not quite the snowman idealist image that we want, but the sun is shining through the snow and I'm getting some light bleed through the snow, and I really want that to be a kind of prominent feature of these images. The hard part is that it is in kind of a parking lot area, so composing around what is kind of a disorderly scene is going to be the main challenge here. I might have to move a little bit more forward out of frame here and try to compose. So really all we're seeing is the snow and the light bleeding through it. And I've got the Cinestill loaded, and for this particular shot I've dropped the camera down low because we have this this truck behind here. I really don't want to see it, but I do really want to shoot from this angle so we get that kind of light passing through the snow look. And so I've dropped the camera down, that way the truck is behind the like snow wall, just to hide it and kind of clean the scene up a little bit. But yeah, I'm just gonna focus on this here, and I'm gonna stop down quite a bit just to make sure that all of this is in focus, because I am shooting kind of diagonally, that my depth of field needs to include both the closest part and the furthest part as it kind of sweeps diagonally through the frame. I want to take a moment to express my gratitude for today's sponsor, Mediam Film Lab. For those not in the know, I run a small boutique film lab right here in Anchorage, Alaska. And recently, I took the leap, quitting my day job to dive further into the world of film. Thanks to this shift, I've been able to dedicate more time to creating videos like these. And it's also allowed me to invest in lab-grade film developing and digitizing services, which directly support the work that I make here. After all, running a film channel requires developing and scanning a whole lot of film. I want to extend a massive thank you to the loyal patrons who entrust me with their film developing needs. Your support goes beyond your photos. It directly contributes to the content you see here on this YouTube channel, and it makes it possible for me to continue to share our love for film with the entire world. So whether you realize it or not, your patronage not only supports what I do here on this channel, but it also indirectly supports the entire film community. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Now, back to the video. So for this scene I have some, I would call this like industrial waste or like industrial storage. There's some greenhouses over here, and so I'm getting a lot of like beautiful light passing through the greenhouses, but I've also got this like stack of like pallets that all have this like perfect little square hat of snow, and I think it all looks very clean, and I've got some really nice light streaking across the foreground here. Sweet. And metering for this scene should be pretty straightforward because we don't have any dramatic light, but we also have a ton of mixed tones. We have some darks and some lights, so an average metering should be pretty consistent, pretty accurate. Fantastic. So Sweet, I've only got one more shot of Cinestill, you know. There's another frame to be had here that I almost walked away from. I only saw it because I bumped, or I guess in picking up the tripod, I shifted the camera around and stumbled upon another frame. This too will be landscape. I'm gonna need to move a little further. Okay, so for this composition, we have some steam kind of hanging around in the background that is creating a beautiful texture. And this one will also be landscape orientation. I think I'm gonna just go a stop darker. I've got a little bit more highlight coming in, but metering is gonna be a little tricky because of the fact that I really wanna meter for the light coming through this is a time in which I was using a spot meter. That would be a lot smarter. 1/125th at f8, because I do want a little bit of like bloom, I guess. Actually, hold on. The steam was drifting into frame perfectly. I had to get the shot then. Fantastic. That is the end of the Cinestill. Great, so I've got two more compositions to make here with the sprocket shots, also including the lit up greenhouses. And of course, there's the price to quality ratio. Buying vintage cameras means buying used cameras that are well over 50 years old. So $10,000 worth of camera can be had for as little as $2,000. Now these cameras can compete with even the highest end DSLRs, which sell for well over $6,000. Yet, this is still not the reason I shoot film. There's still one more reason to shoot film that I don't see people talking about, and I think I know why. So for this frame, we're looking at kind of snow, fence, greenhouses, trees behind there, this kind of layered composition, and I'm looking at it very flat, very two-dimensional, you know, the Wes Anderson look. I'm thinking this scene would benefit from a warming filter, especially because we have this kind of direct side light. We're gonna get that beautiful kind of sunset glowy characteristic, and once again it's this kind of Wes Anderson look. So I'm gonna warm it up, which will actually be really helpful. This warming filter is going to cut down on a stop of light. For this shot, I've got the 127mm on. I'm at f8 at 1/400th of a second with the warming filter. So f8 at 1/400th is about a stop and a third, stop and a half overexposed. But with the warming filter, that cuts out just about a stop of light, maybe 2/3 of a stop of light. And so now we're looking at about a stop to 3/4 of a stop overexposed, and that should be right. And I've got this, oh, I'm gonna scoot a tiny bit this way. I've got a tree that I've got perfectly centered between these two structures here. Fantastic. All right, now to switch to the wide. A wide angle lens may not be the wide I'm looking for. I still want that compression and that flatness without the kind of the distortion of a wide angle lens. So instead I'm gonna go to the 90 and I'm just gonna hike back and see how much I can get in the frame before I start to kind of cut out if things start to enter the frame on the left and right. So we're just gonna hoof it backward. The main reason I shoot film, the reason you should shoot film, and the greatest part about film is its organic constitution, its cellular, elemental, and anatomic construction and formulation. The way it creates an image is governed by the physical world. the inverse square law, and by chemical action and reaction. This fundamental difference between a natural process and a binary one is the greatest advantage of shooting film. So why is it not more widely discussed? So this ended up working out perfectly because I've walked backward instead of using a wider angle lens. I've also changed the parallax. As we've moved backward, it's brought the trees in the background, it's brought them more into frame without forcing us to raise the camera. I am gonna raise it a little bit to try to bring even more of those trees in. With this composition, I'm gonna go ahead and stop all the way down to like f11, just because we have those trees in the background, and I definitely want this kind of like really compressed flat, like I said, Wes Anderson look, and it looks great. I do have some light and some leading lines, and these two perfect framed snow piles. If I went any further backward, I'd have a fence and a tree that would enter frame left and a stop sign and a fence that would enter frame right. So as far back as I can go, I'm just getting the edges of these snowbanks. We were at f8 at 1/400th, so now we're at f11, but without, so we should still be, if you go from f8 to f11 and lose the stop of light, we should be f11 at 1/400th. Just gonna double check this because I really like this image. Yeah, should be right, f11 at 1/400th. Probably should take the dark slide out. Fantastic. All right, on to the next one. To put it simply, a lack of understanding and subsequent exploitation keeps many photographers from capitalizing on film's greatest asset. If you always shoot at box speed and develop as instructed, you might as well shoot digital. Film formulation and digital image processing are both designed to do the exact same thing: approximate reality as accurately as possible. However, with digital, you're not able to tweak the image processing pipeline. You're locked out of the formulation of the image. That's okay. Just fix it in post. So the scene that I'm looking at here is a house that's been in the neighborhood for a while, and I never see anyone in and out of it. There's some windows that are boarded, some aren't, but either way, there's a ton of trees on this property that kind of safeguard the house. And with all this snowfall, the trees all fell over. There's like 4 or 5 fallen trees on a single property. And so it's kind of unveiling the house a little bit. You can see the house more than you normally can, but even still, it's very hidden within the chaos of all the fallen trees. Now, the interesting part about this composition is that it is just chaotic. It's a mess. And so finding a way to kind of frame this house so that it stands out, it's almost like a Where's Waldo for the home. That's how messy this frame is. Underexposure film, red scale it, cross-process it, push it, pull it, soup it, age it, scratch it, flash it, light leak it, and run it through cameras it was never designed to. Take advantage of film's unique properties. There's a naturally beautiful chaos in the real world. Film borrows from molecular structures and crystal formations, chemical bonds, reflections, refractions, reciprocity. Why not enjoy these? Perfectly exposed and ordinarily developed film is what digital cameras are modeled after. What digital fails to do is anything outside the perfect exposure triangle. So journey outside the lines. Now, this is another one of those that I would have probably not shot sprocket shots for, but they're loaded, so we're gonna do it. This house has been like untouched, nobody lives here, so the snow in the driveway and the yard and everything is piled up very organically. And because the house is gray, it kind of blends in with these colder, more muted tones, and you know, there's no vibrant colors, but we do have this tree in the front that's covered in berries, so you get this bright pop of red right in the beginning of the front of the frame. So I'm shooting a wide, and then I'd like to move in for a close-up of the berries on the trees, and I might even do a vertical sprocket for that one. Man, this is one of those ones I may have to use the ND for this because, kind of like the frames earlier, I want the background to be there for context, but it's not necessary. I don't want it to take away from the tree being the main subject. So I'm gonna throw on the ND and take a reading with that. I'll be able to open up to f5.6 and shoot it 1/250th of a second. Once again, that's metering for ISO 125 instead of 200 because we're dealing with a lot of whites. Then the meter is going to skew towards underexposure, so we compensate by metering as a slower film speed and overexposing. So either way, f5.6, 1/250th of a second, and pull the dark slide. Oh, I'm an idiot. I took a reading through the ND, but I didn't even put the ND on. I'm glad I didn't move. I'm gonna shoot that again. Stupid, so dumb. At least we recognize our mistakes before moving on. That's always the worst, when you move on and then you realize it. There we go. Okay, now we'll move back. Yeah, in theory, these looks can be achieved through post-production in a digital pipeline, but current software can never accurately estimate the variability of actuality. The physical world has quirks and unlikely repeatability. Subjecting film to these variables of matter causes it to fall apart and into place, creating inescapably original works. There's entropy at play. But it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? For the love of God, we have a snowman. This is what I was really hoping. I was hoping to get this, and I'm very bummed that I think I might just load a roll of Cinestill because this shot with this light might be perfect. I'm gonna try to shoot a sprocket shot first, but man, I wish I had seen this scene before finishing that roll. Last time I needed NDs for that, but I think we might be in just enough shade that I won't need NDs for this. I do not. f5.6 at 400 should be just fine. Actually, I lied. I'm not sure I want overexposure, because I think if I expose for the highlight, this dark shadow area becomes very closed in, and the glow, there's a glow kind of bouncing off the house and then reflecting and lighting up the front of the snowman. And I think that if I underexpose or expose for the highlights, that the highlights will really pop. I've got a light on under there. I'm gonna go ahead and expose for the highlights here. Actually, with the underexposure, with this kind of softer light, if I go underexposed, I think f8 might be the sweet spot. Now, the thing that I want to try to do is I've got that shot and it's a vertical and I don't necessarily love that. So what I'm going to do is create kind of like a triptych panorama where I'm just going to try to get the shot on the left and the right. With sprocket shots, because I have the holes, I don't necessarily want to do a classic like stitch panorama. What I'm going to do is just get 3 individual frames, you know, so there's naturally a gap between them, that when viewing them side by side, that gap between them should exist as it does in real life. And it's really important that you keep your exposure settings the same. Obviously, they need to look like they're the same lighting, same situation. Sweet. I have the full 3 frames. Now, because I've already gone one way, I'm going to recompose the first frame so I can remember where my left edge was. Now, the hard part here is maintaining an even horizon line across your image. That's probably the hardest part. Exploiting this property of film requires time and dedication to the medium in order to build intuitive understandings about the ways that images are formed. You have to learn the chemical makeup and the ways that different film stocks behave given certain circumstances. I think this is the reason why you rarely hear about this fascinating aspect of film. It's something that no YouTube video could ever begin to illustrate. You just have to go out and experiment for yourself and find the ways that you like to shoot it, just like the photographers of yesteryear did. Isn't there some saying about 10,000 hours or whatever? I guess that's what makes them the greats. Thank you so much for watching. If you're new here, this is a personal channel all about what it takes to be a working paid professional. I talk about things like ideology, inspiration, philosophy, and teach practical skills. Everything you'll need to know to make money doing what you love. So, I hope this episode convinced you to explore film's many quirks and variabilities, instead of just shooting overexposed by a stop and developing as normal. There's so much outside of the expected to be explored with film. So if you know anyone who's only ever shot portrait and they always overexposed by a stop, just as a rule of thumb, send them this video Every like, share, and subscribe really makes a difference, because right now, my biggest goal with this channel is just to get to a place where I can monetize it. So once again, thank you so much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Bye.